speaking of snack that can't be reached, Guy Ritchie's 2023 movie
That
Operation
was a great
Fortune was
segue.
very hard to find. Very hard to find. Like
Oh yeah, good point.
it kind of been announced and disappeared for a little bit. Didn't know what happened to it, and then it wound up in the theater. So I was super interested. We're all a fan of at least one of Guy Ritchie's movies. So, what did you think about the 2023 espionage movie, Operation Fortune?
Uh, I'll start by just saying that I really liked it. I mean, I feel like we kind
Okay.
of mentioned it last week when you picked it, but I feel like in most cases, a lot of his like these action thriller espionage, whatever you want to tag it with, like when he's kind of in that lane, I feel like he's at least making an entertaining movie, and it's mainly because the movies move fast, and he always kind of has a nice assembly of actors, actresses that either are regulars that he started to use, or people that have, at this point been in multiple films of his. And in this case, you have a cast that have, a handful of them that have been in, multiple movies of his, with Statham and Hugh Grant at this point. And even what's the dude's name? I think he was in a couple of the other movie too. Who plays the
Josh
sniper?
Hartnett.
Who?
Wasn't Josh Hartnett in another Guy Ritchie movie too?
He may have been. I was thinking about the other guy on Fortune's team, the sniper guy.
I don't know the actor's name, but JJ was the character.
Bugsy Malone or something like that. I can't remember his name.
But
He's only been in like
he's only
been in like 3 movies, and it's like 2 of the 3 are Guy Ritchie movies.
See, I didn't recognize him, but definitely, I'm pretty sure Josh Hartnett was in that LA. Wasn't there like Jason Statham, and it was like an LA armored truck movie?
Wrath of Man.
Wrath of Man, whatever. Yeah, Josh Hartnett was in that.
Yeah, he was. That's right. That's right.
And speaking of, he was really fun in this. I thought it was fun to see Josh Hartnett get to do some, but I don't know that I've seen him do like a comic riff on almost like he was doing a riff on like a Brad Pitt sort of persona of like a likable alpha actor guy who just everybody seems to know who he is but who's never been in this type of real life threatening situation. And they managed to do both things, kind of the jokes about like, oh, here's a guy who's out of his league impersonating. He impersonates this guy for a living, but here he is actually being that guy, and he can't do it. But he also had a couple of moves within the story. And even though this isn't the kind of movie that I don't think anyone's going to come out saying they just loved, I think that one of the things that makes you like it, like you said, Steve, is that each character does kind of get a couple of moves. Like Hugh Grant, if you're a Hugh Grant fan, he's got a couple of moves in that. He gets to do something kind of fun. Aubrey Plaza, I still don't think people quite 100% know how to write for her, but when it clicks really well. The scenes where she's like trying to be funny within the context of the character, it usually is like cringy, but when she's just doing the sort of femme fatale or sort of like espionage stuff that you can do in this kind of story, I thought she was really a solid member of that little team. I mean, this felt like a light, fluffy movie. I've seen movies recently that were much heavier in their approach to this kind of violence, and this was like cartoon almost. What did you think, Ronald?
I thought it was okay. Kind of middle of the road for Guy Ritchie movies, but Guy Ritchie's middle of the road, as a lot of people's, excellent, which is it's just one of those things. Like it's probably my least favorite one that I've seen in a while, even below the Night movie, King Arthur. It just something didn't click, and I was like, oh, this is why it was distributed the way it was. Like it, you kind of get a feeling like there's a reason why this is having a hard time coming to the States. It's not that it's bad, but it's like it's not at the excellent level. It's just
it's very middling. It's like it's not even trying to be excellent. I mean, it's funny. It's in contrast to a movie we just saw, John Wick, Chapter 4, where like each fight scene has this consideration given to it. And I think every fight scene in Operation Fortune was like, we all know Jason Statham can kick ass, so let's just have him go ching chong ching, like skibbity scabbity do on somebody, and then it was like it was done, and it was like I don't know that I quite saw a fight that made sense happen. You know what I mean? But I know that he kicked the guy's ass, and there were several moments that were like that where it felt like it. I don't know. It just was an indication of the kind of what you're talking about, the middle of the road aspirations, even of a movie like this.
For sure. But that doesn't mean it was bad. Like I said, I got through it. I'm like, okay, this is a solid Guy Ritchie movie. It's
It does seem like the kind of movie that will, like, when it does come to video on demand or streaming, yeah, it does seem like it's kind of in that lane where, it will find a much bigger audience than it has found so far in theaters. But because it does have, the cast that people will recognize, and, like John said, Aubrey Plaza is kind of having a moment. She's in, more than she's ever been in recently.
Yeah.
And, I just think, just these kinds of movies, like, I don't know, it's probably the weaker of the three, I guess, in terms of like The Gentleman and Wrath of Man and now this. But like you said, Ronald, it's like, even though I'd say maybe it's the weakest of those three, it's still better than a lot of like this kind of movie.
Much better
that gets a release like this got, or it just has more to offer, I think. And like an important thing for me, especially recently, finding time to watch all this stuff, is like it moves quickly. It's not too long. It's enough there to kind of get the story across. I do like there's a scene, like the kinds of things that happen in the movie where like it's not a perfect like action movie. Like
no.
there's a lot of bumbling things that happen, even though Jason Statham could kick anybody's ass. It's like he's like making mistakes, that he's either not telling people, or he went out the back door when she told him to come out the front.
See, that stuff worked great for me. The sort of like banter about how everybody's kind of in that zone you're talking about, Steve.
Yes.
That stuff worked great.
Yeah, like they're so great at their jobs, but like everyone, especially him as the the guy, seems to be like just doing dumb stuff. Like he loses the lawyer consigliere guy, and like when he comes after him, he like pushes him off a building. So like he's just like creating more problems for the group, even though he's so good at what he does.
Well, that was one of the best
all
gags,
that stuff
Steve,
worked.
Where the guy falls and like we think with everyone, they're like, oh, that's not the guy we thought it was, and then here comes the guy they thought it was, and he basically dies in the same way.
Does the same thing.
That was a good gag.
That guy, the guy who the Bugsy Malone actor, I forget the name of the character in the movie, JJ or whatever you said it.
Yeah.
Like when he's like, that's not Ben, and then the guy falls, he's like, that's Ben. like that's good. Like that's fun stuff, and it's got enough of that to kind of keep it moving.
And I liked the little bromance between Josh Hartnett and Hugh Grant. I thought that worked well too. It was one of the best. Again, because it was a comic conceit you could see coming, but it felt like it was part of the way the movie did kind of keep me guessing. Because I mean, I don't know. I guess I'm sort of like maybe I'm leaning towards Steve in that I'm coming out sort of saying I had fun watching this. But I know what you mean, Ronald, about like there were moments where I almost felt like I wasn't really watching a movie, or I honestly, after seeing John Wick Chapter 4, I've been kind of blown out, and I watched John Wick 3 before that because I hadn't seen it before. So I've seen like awesome, intense gunplay and action, like 5.5 hours of it or whatever in the last couple days. So this felt very much like almost like low budget, like middle, like
definitely
as though this is Guy Ritchie using his friends' yachts and just going to ports that he wants to go to and shooting it. It didn't feel like it was being that ambitious with how it was staging things or how the action played out, but it did keep me guessing enough in the storyline. And it's that kind of movie where they develop these characters with little in jokes that by the time it gets to the end, there's 2 or 3 little things to serve. There's like the plot, then there's how the characters end up, and then there's the overall sort of tonal little whatever they're trying to juggle for this movie. And I think I would have come down against this movie much more negatively if it didn't seem to be so light. Like if it seemed like it was taking itself seriously, I think a lot of the kind of not reaching for excellence would have bothered me. But as it is, it's almost like the Adam Sandler movie version of a Guy Ritchie movie, where it feels like, oh, these are people, like you said, Steve, some people who've worked together before and some people that are new that seem like they'd be fun to play with. And they've gone to some great locations, and no one probably is complaining about their experience making this movie. I mean, I'm just imagining that. Maybe Guy Ritchie's horrible to work for, but this seems like it would be one of those fun shoots, like it light and frothy. So it's if you look at the reviews for it, critics have been pretty, like the people who like it are saying, yeah, it's fun, go see it, and the people who hate it are saying like, this is what Guy Ritchie has lost it. I definitely don't agree with that second opinion, but I do think it's kind of interesting that Guy Ritchie is at this point now where, as you've said, Steve, and as you kind of indicated, Ronald, he could kind of churn this type of movie out and never make a major movie again. Do you know what I mean? Never make a movie that really grabs people by the collar again.
Yeah.
And that'd be a bummer, because I do think the guy still has some style and some some of the ways this movie was put together and some of the humor and the way dialogue overlays, like sometimes it's showing you a flash forward, sometimes it's showing you a flashback. I think that stuff is still kind of fun and creative, and I don't know, there's some structural things to enjoy, but it does not feel like tightly wound, like clockwork precision Guy Ritchie. This definitely feels like the more relaxed kind of format.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I would still recommend this movie. I think if it's something that you have interest in, you know, while it's in theaters. If not, I'm sure probably in the next couple of weeks or a month at probably most, it'll probably be on a couple different platforms for VOD. But yeah, I would just one more time. I mean, I miss Josh Hartnett. I used to be like obsessed with him.
Too,
like, when he had a moment back in like the early 2000s, you know, I was really big fan of his and kind of felt like he never really kind of got out of a certain lane that Hollywood had kind of put him in, like especially in that Pearl Harbor time of his career.
Yeah. It's like they wanted to make him boring, and then he kind of became boring.
Just like very bland and like just that leading man. But I don't know. It just I'm glad to see, you know, he's got a role in Oppenheimer coming out this summer. He's got a couple of other things lined up that seem a little different. So yeah, I'm just happy to see him in this. Yeah, I thought he was great in it. Yeah. Anything else you guys want to add to Operation Fortune?
I guess there's not. I mean, I think we mentioned all the people that are notable in it, and I think people kind of know at this point if they're on board for a middle of the road Guy Ritchie spy comedy, thriller, or whatever we want to call this. But